Hey everyone, good afternoon. Welcome to our training webinar on Monitor Maintenance 101. I'm Christine Adams from Tank Utility, and I am joined today by my colleagues Abby and Peter, and we are looking forward to speaking with you a little today about monitor maintenance. So before we get into the topic, I'm just going to go over a few points with you. So first, we recommend joining this live webinar via computer so that you can see the slide deck and so that you can see any demonstrations that Abby and Peter do. If you do have any problems with your audio, you can join with your phone using the phone number that was sent to you in the email from Tank Utilities GoToWebinar. That's where you also find the link to join via computer as well. So check that if you have any audio problems to join with the phone. And then if you do have any questions, feel free to submit them throughout the webinar. There should be a question button on your GoToWebinar panel, and you can just chat your question right in there and we will make sure to answer it. And then finally, we will send a recording of this webinar along with the slide deck to everybody who registered. So if something comes up for you in the middle of the webinar and you need to leave, you'll be able to pick it up later with that recording. So as I mentioned, we have Abby and Peter joining us today. Can you guys give us a little bit of background about who you are, yourself, your role, maybe how long you've been with Tank Utility, and whatever else you want to say? Feel free to go ahead. Abby, we'll start with you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Christine. I'm Abby. I'm a BDR at Tank Utility, which means if you're thinking about starting a tank monitor project, I'm a really good first point of contact for you. I've been at Tank Utility for about a year now, and looking forward to talking more about monitors with you all.
Hey everyone, I'm Peter. Thanks for the great introduction, Christine. I'm the head of Tank Utility's product support team. Many of you, if you already have a monitoring project, have probably interacted with either myself or somebody on my team at some point. I've been with Tank Utility for a little over 3 years now, but this is the first one of these webinars that I've done, so I hope you all won't judge me too harshly.
Oh, I forgot to say, I saw some familiar names and some new ones, and I'm really glad that you're all here. I hope that you'll pick up some tips and see that monitoring is pretty easy, and we'll try to make it even easier for you.
Thanks, guys. That's awesome. Before we get started, I'll just do a brief overview of what we're talking about today. So we'll discuss activating the monitor and the different light sequences and what they mean. And we'll get into how to tell when your batteries need to be changed or replaced and how to actually swap them out. And then we'll talk a little bit about how to put your monitors to sleep and the situations in which you would want to put them to sleep. And then finally, we'll end with some best practices for physical maintenance and installation. So first, we'll start off really simply with activating your monitor and how to do it. So Abby, I'll hand it over to you to talk a little bit more about this.
All right, so I've got a monitor here. A lot of you might be familiar with what that looks like. We've got the place where it connects. We'll talk more about that. And we've got a magnet on the string. One of the most important things with any technology, if you're having any trouble, try turning it on. Sometimes you can turn it off and turn it back on again, but ours we just say, just turn it on. And another word we sometimes use for this is activate or reactivate or re-trigger. It all means the same thing. It's just hold the magnet to the place with the little picture of a horseshoe magnet on it. And you'll see first it'll flash those blue lights. Oh, then you take off the magnet. Shoot, did I do it wrong? I think I held the magnet too long. Okay, it's a good example of doing it too long. It used to be 3 seconds. Now you just touch it until the lights come on, and then you take it off. And then you'll see it'll flash. There we go. And then the first light will flash. That's the battery. Battery's good. That comes solid, and now the second light is flashing. The second light, there's a little symbol on it for you to remember. It means the connection, and it looks like what you have on your phone to see if you have a connection. So that'll blink until the monitor has a solid connection. Sometimes it takes a little longer than you might think, but don't worry, it's still working. And then it goes solid. Hey, that was good timing. So then the third one will be blinking, and once the third one goes solid, that means there's a confirmation that your computer has, that your system in the cloud has received the reading, and you're all good. Then the lights will eventually turn off, but your monitor's still on. If your first light, it turns red, that means that the batteries need to be replaced. That's some pretty simple troubleshooting for you. We'll talk about replacing batteries in a moment. If the second one is red, that means that the signal isn't strong enough, so you might want to try putting the monitor somewhere else, or just try again. Sometimes if you turn it on again, it works the next time. If the third one is red, that means, again, that it wasn't successful. Try it again. If it doesn't work, just give us a call because we have some other solutions for you. One more light that's pretty common that you might see is if suddenly all of the lights turn yellow instead of that blue or blue-green that you're expecting, that means that your monitor is updating. Just leave it. It's doing great, and it will send a reading when it's done updating. I'm going to pass it to Peter to show you how to change batteries.
Sure thing. Just to interject really quick on that, the yellow lights, you'll basically see a yellow LED go back and forth across the front like it's a Knight Rider or a Cylon. That just means that the monitor, as Ivy said, is downloading a firmware update. We release those fairly regularly now. We just had a big release, so a bunch of you may have seen your monitors do that when you were trying to activate them the first time. It's a normal thing to see. Feel free to reach out to the support team if you have questions, but your monitor should send a transmission as soon as it's done with that firmware update. So for knowing when to replace the batteries, you're going to want to go into the portal, into your device list. There are a bunch of columns here that you can add and manage to have information ready to access at any time, depending on what you want to look at, what your role in your company is, and what you need to be able to see at easy reach. Battery life is one of those things that a lot of people are going to want to have access to. If you go into the upper right-hand corner of your device list, you'll see 3 lines in sort of a downward-facing triangle configuration. If you click on that, it opens up a menu that'll let you add and remove columns from that device list. You just want to make sure that you have battery checked, and then you can see it as in the slide that Christine has up. If you click on the header title where it says battery, you can sort it either by high battery life to low battery life or in this case low to high. And then if you sort it low to high, you'll see those monitors that need battery replacement listed first. If it's red, it's please replace the batteries as soon as possible. The monitor might already be offline if you see that red cloud under device health. If it's orange, then replace the batteries soon. It's not necessarily urgent. If the monitor's gone offline already, it could be that it needs a battery replacement in that case too. Green, the battery should be fine. If it's still offline, feel free to reach out to us and we'll help you figure out what's going on with that monitor. Now to replace the batteries, pretty straightforward. We try to make this as simple as possible, as with most things with the monitors. You're gonna look on the back of the monitor, sort of the other side from where you would put the magnet to activate it. Abby, if you can hold up a monitor so we can see here, but also in the diagram. So on the back side, you'll see 4 screws right where the brackets are, and use just a Phillips head screwdriver to unscrew those, as is being demonstrated here. Make sure to keep track of the screws. And then the battery harness should be visible when you pull away that bottom plate, just like that. And you'll just, you can pull that sticker off. It just comes with that from the manufacturer to show that we installed those initial batteries. You're going to want to use AA Energizer lithium batteries. The product number for it, if you search for it on Amazon or wherever, is L91. Most hardware stores sell them. Any of the big box stores like Home Depot or Lowe's or anything like that is going to have them available as well. You'll just pop the batteries out and then insert the new ones. Once you have inserted the new batteries, it should cause the monitor to go through what we call a power reset cycle. So it should immediately try to transmit again. If you don't see it trying to transmit again, just feel free to trigger the monitor again or activate it again and make sure that the battery replacement was successful. If you have a brand new monitor and as Abby was mentioning, you see that initial first LED go red, it could be that during the shipping process or during manufacturing, one of the batteries wasn't inserted all the way. I would recommend, instead of just replacing the batteries on those, open it and then just sort of reseat the batteries that are already in there. Especially with a new monitor, the batteries should be good. So you should be able to get those batteries to work. With any kind of battery replacement, if you have several monitors or even just one monitor that you need replacement batteries for, reach out to us and we can send you free replacement batteries.
Awesome. One question we actually got from Santiago on batteries is if the battery is red on the portal, you will not get any lights to turn on the monitor when using the magnet, correct?
Correct. If the monitor is like I mean, that's sometimes depending on how low battery it is, you may see that first LED go red, but it could be if the battery is very, very, very dead that it just doesn't even have enough power to power the LEDs. So if you try to trigger the monitor and no lights come on at all, I would recommend trying to swap the batteries. If you swap your battery and you still don't see lights, contact support will get you a new monitor.
Thanks, Peter. We also got one more question from Sherilyn, and this is on how do you tell if the unit is automatically trying to send after battery replacement?
The LEDs will light up in the same way as if you had triggered it with a magnet.
Excellent. Thanks, Peter. Thanks, guys, for the questions. Keep them coming. We will make sure to get to them sometime during this webinar. All right, I will switch over to the next slide now, and Abby will talk a little bit about putting monitors to sleep.
Thank you guys for your questions so far. That's really great. Sometimes if you are gonna have some monitors in stock, like you're gonna keep them on the shelf in case so you have them ready when your customers want them, or if you take one off of the shelf for a little bit to replace one. Those are some times that you might want to put your monitor to sleep. And the way you do that, it's similar to turning the monitor on, but you just hold it longer. So you wait, you'll actually see those lights from turning it on, but you keep the magnet on, keep going, keep going, keep going. It's about 10-15 seconds. It's a little longer than you think. And you see one red light comes on, there's 2 red lights, and there's 3 red lights. Now I can take the magnet off and it'll flash. There we go. This monitor's sleeping. Good night, monitor.
It's important to note that putting the monitor to sleep also takes it out of your active device list. So if you want to find that monitor again, you're going to go back into that in that filters and columns menu. If you go over to the filters section of that, there'll be a box you can check where it says show only active devices. If you uncheck that, it'll show monitors that are asleep as well. It'll also show you all the monitors you haven't deployed yet. So if you are, you have a monitor, you put it to sleep, it's not showing up in your portal, it's probably because because you put it to sleep, it's been put into the inactive list. Putting the monitor to sleep doesn't remove it permanently from your portal. It doesn't change any configuration settings. It just stops it from transmitting to preserve battery life while you're not using it. And we have a lot of customers that might need to do that for seasonal accounts, customers that are monitoring tanks attached to crop dryers, things like that. They don't really need to have the monitors on there year-round necessarily. So you can cycle those through, and putting it to sleep is a good way to keep from having to replace the batteries when the monitor isn't really doing anything for you.
Peter, it sounds like it would be really helpful that the monitor comes out of your portal so that when you're looking at your portal, you only see the monitors that you're actively using, not the ones that are just sleeping. That way you just have a clean view of everything you need.
Exactly, that's the intention with having it be pulled out of the active list.
We got another question around, can we set when we want all our monitors to take a reading?
Yeah, they're in the frequency screen for any monitor, when you click into an individual monitor in your portal, you can access different menus like the configuration menu, the general information menu, things like that. One of those is the frequency tab. And if you go in there, you can change how frequently you want a monitor to be measured. We're going to have another webinar forthcoming that's going to go into a lot more detail on how to use the frequency settings to get the best use out of your monitor. You can also always send us a support ticket, and we can send you some helpful articles. We have some articles on our support page that go into the frequency settings. We don't really have time to get into it in this particular webinar, but if you follow up, we can make sure that we send that article to you in the follow-up. Christine, if you can make a note of who asked that question.
Absolutely, yeah.
Change the frequency too, right?
Yeah,
or they can ask you to change it if it's not one of the options.
Yeah, if you want the monitor to report more frequently than once every 3 hours, we'll probably want to discuss with you why and if there's another way that won't be as hard on the battery to get the information you're looking for. But if you need it to read like once every hour, we can do that. You just need to contact us so that we can do it on our end, so that we can make sure that everybody's aware of what the situation is, so we don't want people accidentally having their monitors transmit really, really frequently and then just burn through the battery in like a couple weeks.
That makes sense. Also, I think that sometimes people ask me, I'm not sure if this question might have been asking, like, can you set what particular time of the day the reading will come? Like if you want all your readings at 11 p.m. or 8 a.m.
Yep, you sure can. And that's all in that frequency settings tab for each individual monitor. The software team is working on an update so that you can set those in bulk. I don't believe that's been released yet. But again, we'll go into those settings in detail in the webinar about the frequency settings page.
Beautiful.
Great, thanks, Abby and Peter. All right, and now finally, we'll just get into a little bit more about installation and some best practices on physical maintenance of your monitors.
For sure. So when you're physically installing the monitor, you want to make sure that you're installing it. This is a vertical tank that's pictured here. It's something similar to this, where the monitor is outside of the enclosure where the gauge head and the dial are. Oftentimes, especially on older tanks, those tank lids are made out of metal. And if the monitor is inside that, it's going to be really hard for it to transmit out. Metal does a really good job of blocking a cell signal, especially if it's metal that's right in front of the transmitter. So you want to make sure that your monitor is outside, on the outside of the tank and facing away from whatever structure the tank might be right next to. If you have a house, say that like a residential tank is on, you don't want to have the monitor facing, and by facing I mean with the tank utility, the direction the tank utility logo is pointing out towards. You don't want it facing directly into a building because that's going to impede the signal as well. So like this picture, have it facing away from the structure. You can see the siding behind it. You want to make sure that the wire or the cable for the sensor forms this loop at the bottom. We call that a drip loop, so that water is wicked away from the place where the cable plugs into the enclosure. Make sure it's outside of any kind of tank lid. If you're mounting it on an underground tank, we really recommend you mount it on the outside of that underground tank lid, depending on what freedom you have to do things. We have a lot of individual customers, consumers who will put a fence post next to the tank and mount the monitor on that. If that's not really an option, anytime you can put it outside of the tank lid is good. If you have to have it on the underside of a tank lid in an underground tank, you want to make sure that you screw it into the bottom of that tank lid so that that tank utility logo is facing through up and out through that underground tank lid. If it's a metal tank lid and it's underground, it's probably not going to be able to transmit through unless it's on the outside of that lid. And I realize I just said tank lid about 30 times, but
I think it was clear.
All right, that pretty much covers our presentation for today. So we can get into some Q&A now. I did see a few more questions come in. We have one from Kristen, and she's asking, how many days after a battery has been replaced does this reflect in the portal?
It can take a few days. The reason that I have to be a little bit vague on that is that it depends on how many readings it had at a low voltage. The battery indicator is generated by averaging out, I believe it's the last 10 voltage readings that the monitor recorded. So if the monitor has been in a low voltage state for a really long time, like, you know, for like a week or two, then it still has to kind of grind through those older voltage readings to have the newer ones update. I would say you should start to see it update from the red to the orange to the green within 3 to 5 days. If it's been a week and you still haven't seen any change, reach out to us and we can take a look at the actual like voltage in volts on our end and make sure that the battery change actually went through, that, you know, you didn't like have bad batteries or something that you were replacing it with, things like that. But it, unfortunately, it's just sort of a few days depending on how long it's been on low battery.
Great. I saw another question from Santiago around putting a monitor to sleep. And Santiago asks if when you put the monitor to sleep, do you always get the snooze icon in the portal or not necessarily?
If you have successfully put the monitor to sleep, you should see when you are looking at that particular device in the device list, that little alarm clock with the Z's on it. If it doesn't show that, it probably didn't go to sleep, and I would reach out to us to see so we can kind of work together to either see if it's just a user error thing, you didn't hold the magnet down long enough. If you continue holding, it's important to note that if you continue holding the magnet down, like much longer than Abby did, Abby pulled the magnet away basically as soon as the third red LED went across. If you keep holding it down, you'll start seeing green LEDs, and that's taking it sort of past sleep mode and into a manufacturing test mode that you can get out of. It doesn't do anything bad to the monitor, but it won't put the monitor to sleep. It just basically tests the modem to make sure the modem's working.
Excellent.
If you put it to sleep, will the Z's come up in your portal immediately, like within a day, or does that also take a few days to show up?
It should show up immediately because it'll send that sleep transmission. And so we should receive it saying like, hey, monitor got put to sleep, and then it'll switch over to that. So you might need to like wait a little bit depending on your browser for your browser to refresh, but it should show up right away as those Z's.
That makes sense. Refreshing the browser is usually a good solution if you're waiting for something to show up.
Great. We got another question from Tim about installation, and Tim's asking, on a horizontal tank, can the monitor lay flat horizontally?
Yeah, as long as it's outside of the tank lid, that would be my recommendation. Yeah, just on the top, if you imagine my arm is the tank and you just put it sort of like here, right on top of it, that's perfectly fine.
Great. And another one from Sherilyn. To reactivate a monitor, do you have to put it to sleep first and then start over?
No, you should just follow as if you were turning it on for the first time to take a monitor out of sleep. You should just, especially with the new firmware, which is what Abby was demonstrating, put the magnet to that activation point. The 3 LEDs should light up aqua almost immediately, then just pull the magnet away as soon as you see that.
So you don't have to turn it off and then on again, just turn it on again.
Just on.
Just on.
Makes it easy. Got a question from Lewis on if a customer purchases a unit, can they be added to our portal? So it sounds like maybe a customer might have purchased a unit outside of the company, outside of the propane supplier. So can they be added to the portal?
They sure can. Reach out to us on the support team or to your salesperson, and they'll get in touch with us. We want to make sure when you're doing that outreach, make sure you loop in that consumer as well, because we're going to need to get actual written permission or verbal permission over the phone from that consumer so that you can have access to their data. And then we just want to make sure that your salesperson is looped into so that we can update the number of monitors you're contracted for on our end, so that you don't end up with more monitors than we think you're supposed to and have to go back and forth on why and et cetera. So we just want to make sure that the logistical ducks are in.
You don't want to accidentally get charged for too many or too few monitors, depending on how many are in your portal. So definitely talk to the sales team if you have a question like that, sales and support. And we talk to each other too. So if you talk to one, the other will get looped in.
Yeah. But the short answer is yes, we are happy to do that as long as we have the consumer's permission for you guys to have access to their data.
All right. It looks like that's all the questions that we have. Oh, we got one more. This will be we have two more actually, so these will be the last two. And then for anyone else who has questions afterwards, feel free to just send us an email. You can, Peter, maybe we'll have you as the point of contact. What's the best email to get in touch with the support team if there's any additional questions?
So the two best ways to get, the two emails to use to get in touch with us are support@tankutility.com or tankutility.support@generac.com.
Perfect. So if you have any questions after we finish up here, feel free to send an email to either of those email addresses and we'll make sure to get in touch. But the question that we have now is plastic lid monitors can be inside and metal outside, also on 120 zip tie to lug on tank upright. Is that acceptable? Activate twice before leaving. So it sounds like this person's asking a little bit more about where the monitors can be mounted to the tank. And
for that question. So the wear on the tank, Peter's going to have more answers for that. I know he already said that if it's metal, you're going to want it outside of that metal. All right, Peter's back. And I want to show you, since I'm the one with all the props here, you'll notice we've got the screw part on the monitor, and then right next to it, there's that hole. There, okay, that's the way okay, and you can put a zip tie through that hole if you like to attach it anywhere where you might want to attach it. Zip ties are really helpful.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? I had to answer the door, I apologize.
No problem. Yeah, this person was asking about the plastic lids on tanks. Can monitors be inside of those and on the metal ones outside?
Yes, so the monitor should be able to transmit through plastic. If you want to mount like on an underground tank lid that's plastic, if you want to mount the monitor on the outside of it, just to give it a better antenna pattern, so it's not trying to transmit through dirt. The monitors are typically supplied with a metal mounting plate that you can screw into the top of the tank lid. If you need more of those, we can send them. We have tons and tons of them, but typically we try to send a few with each package. But also if it's on an above ground tank, yeah, Abby's got one right there. If it's an above ground tank and you just want to put it under the tank lid there, you can do that with a plastic lid. The metal lid, it can go right on top of the lid too. It'll magnetize to it unless it's made out of a different material than I've ever seen a tank lid made out of.
Can I just show that when you get the box, it'll have the monitor in it over here, and the monitor will be on top of that little metal piece. So when you take out the box,
and the larger boxes that are like 5-ups or 10-ups, they generally are just packaged along with in the grid with them. If you need some, again, let your salesperson know and we can send them out to you. I don't believe we charge for those, so if you want some, we've got lots.
Excellent. So for anyone else who's asked a question that we didn't get to, or if you do think of a question after this webinar, feel free to email us. Again, the email, probably the easiest email to reach out to is support@tankutility.com. That's right, Peter?
Correct.
Great.
Should we spell that for everybody?
Tankutility.com. Was that Abby?
Should we spell that out?
God,
People know
utility.
You can see Tank Utility. It's on all. You've seen it in all our emails at tankutility.com. So support@tankutility.com. You got it. Okay. Sorry to interrupt.
I'm going to send it to everyone in here now. Hopefully everyone got that. So support@tankutility.com for any questions that you may have. Our team will make sure to get in touch with you, regardless of whether it's a question for Peter or for Abby. We'll make sure that it gets to the right person. And I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. And thanks, Peter, and thanks, Abby, for giving us this little deep dive into Monitor Maintenance 101. As I mentioned, we'll send this out after the webinar with the recording and the slide deck. And thank you again, everyone, for joining.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.